Hello, welcome to Planet Smasher HQ. Stick around and I'll tell you what I've been up to for the last couple of weeks. Hello, welcome to Planet Smasher HQ, also known as My Shed. This is the next in the series of Dev Diaries. I'm going to tell you what I've been up to the last couple of weeks, and then I'm sort of feeling the stirrings of a minor ramble on the topic of one of the games I've been working on. Okay, so what were my goals for the last couple of weeks? Well, I gave myself quite a few, actually. My main focus was to motor ahead with the textbook project I'm working on with Glenn from Rule of Carnage. Got a bunch of progress done, working on some chapters, tidying up the editing of some chapters. So I feel pretty good about progress on that. I'm currently sitting at about 50% of the book is edited. There are still some bits that need writing. One of the best parts of this process this week was officially deleting 2 of the chapters. That both helped the word count go down to where it needs to go and took a little weight off because I don't have to write those chapters anymore. Well, one of them was already written, but maybe it'll appear somewhere else. I had a plan to post 2 videos, which I actually posted 3 because, as I'll talk about a little bit, I also posted an unexpected Gasland survey video. So yeah, you'll have seen last 2 weeks there was a retrospective, a video with me doing some dev work on the Incunabula, and a video of me wearing a hat for Gaslands. Speaking of which, I also spent some time this week making a hat for Gaslands, which was excellent fun, and also building a little stage here. It's behind the camera, you can't see where it is. So there's a sort of stage specifically for filming Gaslands content, which might end up being a good place for filming battle report intros, outros, and commentary as well. So yeah, it's a bit sort of basic and sparse at the moment, but I've found some rubbish recently over the last couple of days that's going to spruce it up. So yeah, building. I had a goal to finish writing up the Pacific Command scenario changes. I think I underestimated how much work that was going to take, because actually where I left it in my playtesting with Glenn was that I need to do some more research to find out exactly where some levers were available to me from a game design perspective that were congruent with the history. So I did one of the scenarios. I did the Coral Sea scenario, but it did involve a fair amount of reading and research. So that's going a little slower than I expected, but I got one of the 4 done. I was planning to write up my Rotwalden notes and make some changes to that, but my brain didn't seem interested in it, so I didn't do any work on Rotwalden this last couple of weeks. But I did spend quite a lot of time working on the Incunabula, which grabbed my attention again. And I had a sort of stretch goal to finish a next version, a complete first pass of the prototype rulebook for that, which I broadly finished over the weekend, and I've been tinkering with over the last couple of days, and I will talk more about that in a minute. I wanted to make a little bit more progress on my Duchies of Vinci army for Hobgoblin, which I have made some progress. What else did I do? I also built a computer, a gaming PC, out of some bits and scraps donated by my brother and acquired for cheap online, so that was fun. I haven't built a computer for like 15 or 20 years. Some things have changed, but it was fine. It actually works as well, which is great. And I failed to fix an FDM printer. My friend John gave me an FDM printer, but there seems to be a problem with the power supply, which I haven't figured out yet. So my journey into 3D printing has yet to begin. Okay, let's have a look at some stats. Well, the most important ones to me are, did the website get any visits? Well, it did. It got 4,000 and a bit visitors in February, which is great because it was 2,500 in January over only 570 in December. So the movement of the gaslands.com into Planet Smasher games.com has really juiced up the numbers there. And obviously like running campaigns like the Gaslands survey has pushed people to that website. So hopefully they are learning more about what I'm up to. That's good news. I got 96 new YouTube subscribers. Hello, new YouTube subscribers. Thank you very much for clicking the subscribe button. I was hopeful that the Gaslands content would juice that number a little bit more, but I guess I'm going to start having to make some actual Gaslands content rather than just asking people questions. But that's on the list. That's planned. I got 5 new Patreons. Hello, you 5 wonderful people. I love you particularly. You're on my special list for this last 2 weeks. Thank you very much. And then talking about the Gaslands survey, I got a ton of engagement on that. So I closed the survey yesterday at about 870 something responses, which is fantastic. That's enough to do some serious looking at the data. I spent all of yesterday combing through the survey. I read every single response. I cleaned the data, tagged it up, and I've got a lovely man called Eric who volunteered to do some data analysis to see what else we could find in that. So that's awesome. And this is great news because as I'm trying to figure out what to do with Gaslands next and I'm chatting to Offspray, this just provides some really, really useful insight from the community, particularly the more engaged part of the community, which can help me validate some of the plans that I've been messing around with. Speaking of which, I said that I mentioned last time that I was going to be chatting to some friends, and I had a conversation with Ash Barker over at Guerrilla Miniature Games 2 weeks ago, and that I think was particularly impactful on this last couple of weeks. He gave me some tough love, which was extremely welcome, gave me some really good feedback on where he perceived Gaslands was at the moment, both from a game perspective and from a community perspective, and got me thinking about some really important questions. And that's one of the reasons why he was sort of talking about how I was going to approach some of the market research to validate what I was doing, which is a very good question. And it was nice to be able to turn some of my sort of professional product management skills and experience to bear on my own game. And so that survey was fairly quickly turned around, but it also involved making sure that I had the right hat and stage and stuff to film it. So that was a good shot in the arm for getting some Gaslands kind of preparation work done for making more Gaslands videos. And also, yeah, just I love getting well-considered expert feedback from people, particularly if they do it in a caring way, which Ash did. And so thank you, Ash, that was fantastic. In terms of games played, I didn't play that much this week. I was quite busy with all of this video stuff and writing, but what I did play was a couple of games of Glenn Ford's new game, Borders and Black Flags. We videoed that. I'll probably edit it and put it up on Rule of Carnage at some point in the next month. Borders and Black Flags is a pirate game, which asks the question, what if a pirate game was about being on a pirate ship and the sea moving the ship around, rather than it just being like a skirmish game that happens to have peg legs in it? And it's cool and it's really interesting, and the way that models fall over and then slide around the deck when the waves move is super interesting and very inspiring. Hope to share that game with you soon on Rule of Carnage. I also played a couple of games at Incunabula, which you saw one of, because I've been working on that game. All right, let me tell you a little bit about the Incunabula, because I'm excited about it at the moment. It's bugged in my brain. The Incunabula comes from a bunch of questions coming together for me. One is, how can I make a sort of narrative miniature skirmish game that is very, very welcoming of kit bashing, that uses a sort of somewhat similar open approach to Gaslands and Hobgoblin? Because I feel like I naturally build games that are very sort of, they've got a pluggability, they're sort of Lego blocks when you build your units. And I have been playing a bunch of sort of Inc 28 style kit bashing games with one of my good buddies over the last year. And so we've been, exploring some of the challenges and design questions about making one of these games. It also comes from a desire to make a miniature skirmish game that takes the card draw mechanic of Malifaux and sort of, I don't know, I don't want to say pushes it forward because it's not exactly right, but just makes it more the sort of mechanic that works for me. I happen to not like maths very much in games, and there's a lot of adding numbers together and comparing numbers and subtracting numbers and finding differences between numbers in Malifaux, which makes my brain hurt. And so, to a degree, because cards-based resolution systems haven't really been particularly well explored in miniature games, I feel like that gives me quite an open space to build on the work that Justin Gibbs and Nathan did at Weird Miniatures, and just keep pushing that sort of experiment more in a direction that I'm excited by. And I'm also excited by... I've played a bunch of narrative skirmish games recently where the narrative of the games is sort of hinted at and made to be somewhat emergent from the rules and from the scenarios and from the setup, but is, I don't know, still a little bit too... I feel that there's a space in between sort of inspiring people to make up their own stories with a very open storytelling narrative campaign and scenario system, and having very, very specific sort of didactically controlled stories like you would get in something like Warhammer the End Times, where the story is very specific and you're playing very specific moments in time. Because I think when you look at the way that particularly superhero movies are written, there are very, very common tropey plot hooks and activities that people do. And so by examining the classic activities, the tropes of what the characters are doing, I'm trying to make, for the Incunabula, a skirmish system which basically gives you one of those set piece missions or scenarios or kind of action sequences. And so each of the warbands is basically the hero of their own movie, and the game is your two movies kind of interacting and intersecting. And so the camera will continue to follow your crew after this game and go off to do the next part of their adventure, and the camera for my crew will, you know, follow them off. And so I know that sounds a bit maybe abstract, but the way that I'm starting to explore it is essentially that there are these beats in the campaign where you need to complete some grand quest, and in order to complete the quest you have to do 3 missions, and each of those missions will take a game, and if you fail to do it in the first game you can repeat it and do it in the second game. And so because I'm on a quest line with 3 missions and you're on a quest line with 3 missions, and our quest lines don't always completely intermingle, we get a sort of procedural scenario creation like you would get if you were drawing kind of random missions from a deck, but they're part of a congruent story that each of those crews is currently embarked on. And when they finish that quest, then a new one will trigger, and they'll get the new kind of start of a quest mission, and that will trigger another set of 3 missions. I think actually the honest inspiration here is that I was quite inspired by Mark Latham's design of the quest, the sort of multi-stage quest in Elder Scrolls Call to Arms. And I think like that specifically, there's a couple of quests in that take a few stages to complete, and you kind of complete one quest and it unlocks the next one, which I thought was a very elegant translation of the sort of video game quest mechanic. So I think that is one of the things that I'm really interested in with this. And then a final part of the Incunabula is I'm really inspired by the visuals of sort of reality collapsing, multiverse exploding stuff, like the opening sequences of the first Bayonetta game, or, you know, the collapsing realities of the classic scenes in Inception, or the sort of multiverse of madness sort of reality tripping stuff, both of the Doctor Strange movie with that title, but also the first season of Loki. I think there's a lot of cool stuff about mashing together both genres of miniatures, but also like physical and unreal spaces that I'm excited about. And I suppose a bunch of thinking that I was doing about cyberpunk games and hacking and cyberspace, and thinking about how like Netrunner could be a miniature game, a lot of that stuff has ended up translating into my thought process for the Incunabula, which is the Incunabula takes place after someone finally consummated a sort of Lovecraftian summoning of an outer god. You know, Azazoth has finally been awoken from his dream of the universe to be able to perceive it and thus destroy it. And so reality has kind of collapsed in on itself. Demons and angels and whatever outer dark horrors have sort of spilled across all of reality and time. And I want this playground for a miniatures game where the more powerful you get, or the more further into the game you get, probably by completing these quests, you get access to increasingly ridiculous reality-altering magic or powers. So that, much like Glenn's game of Borders and Black Flags, where mechanics begin to shift the board in extremely surprising and unusual ways, or the amazing final scenario of the Red King campaign system from Frostgrave by Joe McCullough. I love the idea of giving players the ability to break the fundamental rules of the miniature skirmish game as a sort of power. And I don't mean that in the normal way of like how Magic always breaks the rules, but like when you play Flux, the card game, you play cards and it alters the entire game rules. So normally you would draw one card and play one card, but if somebody plays a card in Flux now, you can draw 2 cards and play five cards or something. And so I'm exploring at the moment the idea that some of the more powerful abilities that you get unlocked through artifacts fundamentally change how the resolution system works, or what the scale of the game is, or how terrain functions. And it might be mad, it might be a completely terrible idea, but I'm really excited by this idea that Magic could be reality altering, and within the Magic circle of our skirmish game, reality is the rules system that is currently at play. That's essentially the physics engine. And so if you can mess with the rules system that both players are playing by, then you are de facto changing the sort of physics of the universe. So yeah, so I'm really excited about Incunabula. It's going to have a crew build system, which is essentially like you pick from a range of models, you know, leaders, lieutenants, juggernauts, minions, familiars, that kind of like, it'll be familiar to you from my other games. And then that unlocks a certain number of slots for both you know, perks, sort of skills, innate talents, that kind of stuff. And then another set for your weapons and equipment, which give you the actions. And so right now I'm kind of working on these giant menus of weapons of various tech levels, because I think that's the other thing that I haven't really mentioned is this is intended that like Conan can battle an Inquisitor, and that's fun and in some ways kind of balanced and fair, because they're all overblown sort of, you know, crazy powerful individuals. And so whether it's a cultist with like Cthulhu magic, or, you know, an ancient Greek god, like they're on some kind of an even footing, because they're all, you know, absolutely, it's all superhero movie logic, right? Anyone can take a punch as good as anyone else. Anyway, I'm really excited to share more about Incunabula, and I'll do a bit more of a demo game, and might even do a flip through of the alpha rulebook if I get it into a good state. So yeah, I think last time we spoke, I was jamming with Junk Space and messing about with that. This last couple of weeks, I've mostly been jamming on the Incunabula. Maybe my brain will turn back to Rotwalden in the next couple of weeks. Who knows? In terms of my goals for the next couple of weeks, it's pretty simple actually. As well as getting some videos out, I need to be heads down on the 2 projects that I've got deadlines coming up in about 5 weeks. So yeah, writing on Pacific Command, writing on the textbook, and games design will no doubt occur, and I will video it if and when it does. All right, well, thanks for listening. I will catch you on this channel again soon, and if you haven't, please hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to support the work that I do, head on over to patreon.com/PlanetSmasherGames and consider buying me a cup of coffee a month. It really, really helps right now. It's the primary source of income, so your patronage is greatly appreciated. All right, I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.